So remember I said that a 4-year-old has between 4,000 and 6,000 words by the time you may meet them, a typical language learner. How do we get that? How does that happen? It happens through bombardment. It happens through exposure and hands-on experience. How many times do we say to a child, Mama's here, come to Mama, say Mama. Oh, go get your diaper, we're going to change your diaper. Let's change your diaper now. Let's get the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. A child hears a word between 500 and 1,000 times before they really understand what that object is. But it's all done with hands-on experiential activities. And it's all done through hearing. Did you know that babies babble in the same sounds throughout the world? They all have the same sounds as they're experimenting with their oral musculature. But by the time they're about 8 or 9 months, the sounds that they don't hear in their language begin to filter out. Those brain connections are not being made. So in other languages, you have the guttural, you have different kinds of R's and L combinations that we may not have in English. So it's all through hearing that a child begins to learn the languages what they're exposed to. If a child has a hearing loss or a middle ear infection, their language will be affected. And that's why the newborn hearing test that came in about 10 years ago was so important to Ohio to diagnose children with hearing loss as early as possible. We bombard children with language and experiences from early on. And all that research about talking to babies even in utero and also while you're diapering and putting them to sleep and singing and talking to them really enriches their ability to learn the language of their native language. So we start with vocabulary, and the vocabulary becomes organized in the brain. Now, it's much more complex than just organizing it by categories, but categories is a crucial way that we organize vocabulary and how we learn vocabulary. It actually is cross-hemispheric, but the children begin to organize in the categories of food, animals, clothing, toys, household items, family members, and then they have subcategories. So there's breakfast food, there's lunch food, there's dinner food. And by the time you have a typical language learning 4-year-old, you can ask them, well, what would you eat for breakfast? And they won't say spaghetti. They might say cereal. But if you have a child with a low language ability, when you ask them what they had for dinner, they may say something like paper. They're not sure what you're asking. Because their organization of their vocabulary is not set well. And vocabulary is retrieved cross-hemispherically. So, for example, a child may learn a dog initially, and they realize the dog has 4 legs and a tail. Then there's a cat that has 4 legs and a tail, and the horse has 4 legs and a tail, and a cow has 4 legs and a tail. And all this is an animal. These are animals. And then they begin to subcategorize, well, these are animals that go meow, and these are animals that go ruff, ruff, and these are animals that are on the farm, and these are animals that we see in the zoo. And so by the time you have a typical language learner, they're able to say, they know a cow lives on the farm, and a giraffe or a lion is in the zoo, and a fox may live in the woods. And if, you're enriching all that with your literature and your books too. Food, you can retrieve the name of food, all the different foods a child might be exposed to, and the sensory experience, and the warmth and the comfort of food, and that's all retrieved through smell and through taste. And they can show them a picture of a banana or a picture of an apple, and they can name it, They own that word. And that's how vocabulary is organized in the brain. It's a very simplistic explanation, but it becomes very important when we present our books to the children. So we have books that talk about the different categories of how children can retrieve their vocabulary. So we have Feast for 10, talks about the food and the shopping. We have Market to Market that talks about the animals. We have bunny cakes that I'm going to do a demonstration on in a minute, talks about things in the kitchen. And so when you present your books, we're going to talk about presenting the book, introducing the category. And Brenda did that a little bit with the chameleons. We're going to do an activity with the leaves and with the chameleons. Or we're going to do a measuring activity. You set the stage. The reason that's so important is the child can then begin to know what information he's going to be listening to. He may not anticipate the questions, but he knows what he's going to be listening to and listening for. So at this point, I'm going to do bunny cakes for you. I'm going to start with a child with weak language skills. Now, I know you have a lot to carry in your bags when you come into lessons, but if you can gather up some of the real objects for a story, or even pretend objects for a story, such as if you do animals, having animals in front of you, or if you do a grocery store, like I think a Feast for 10, if you have a little grocery bag and some food, some pretend food, even real food, I can guarantee you, you will have the attention of the children 100% more than if you just present the book in pictures. Remember, like Brenda said, pictures are symbolic, they are not concrete, and children have a hierarchy of developing symbolic reasoning and language. So having objects, even for the high-level child, will engage them much, much more. So you're going to start out, and you can do your regular, I love introducing the vocabulary, exposing all the children to the high-level vocabulary of the front cover, the back cover. Remember, this is the spine. You talk about the author and the illustrator. And then you might talk about the things you brought. Do they know, and this is for a child with weaker language skills, these are, and you stop to see if they can give you anything. They may not know what they are. These are things that we put in to measure and bake with and pour. These are called measuring cups. You're not going to say, no, what are they? You're not asking questions to a child with low-level language. You are not. Please, it's so hard not to do that. We're just programmed to ask questions. But this is where you get frustrated because they can't answer you. They may not, measuring, like Brenda said, is so abstract. Just name it for them. Okay. Most children will not know what a spatula is. Oh, it's something we stir with. It's called a spatula. Don't say, no, what is it? Just name it. And you pretend to stir. And then you have a little bit of flour, pour it on the table, let them play with it a little bit, and you have sugar if they want to taste it. It's all fun. It's hands-on and engaging. You haven't even gotten to the book yet, but it's worth the 2 minutes to do this. It really, really is. How many of you present a book to these children that are not really interested in books, and by the time you get to the second page, they're like under the table? But if you have objects that relate to the story, you will have their attention. Now you're ready for the book. This is a book about see if they can name the animal, a bunny. And he is going to bake something, and he is going to use all these things that we find in the kitchen. So you're really setting the category and the stage for it. No more, you're not going to ask any questions. Now I love this book because of the symbolic pictures. Don't present it all at once, too much visual information. Just turn it back, and then you could say, and remember all the symbolic from concrete to symbolic. I found oops, I forgot my egg, but I would have a hard-boiled egg. I found an egg. There are the eggs. Let's find the bowl. Let's find the bowl. And you could do it together. Yeah, there's the bowl. You found the bowl. Great. Oh, do you know what this could be? And you could open it up and show them the milk inside. There's milk in here. Yeah, where's that milk? Can we find it together? There it is. This is so important for reading comprehension. When they can associate the concrete to the picture for these low-level children, it will really help them in when you get to the point of just pointing to the picture and naming it. Spend a couple of minutes matching the objects to the pictures. You don't have to bring a lot. But it really helps to bring some of the items for their attention and engagement. And here's our spatula. Let's find the spatula together. All this really would take more than 3 minutes. Now you're ready to go to the story. Okay. Now I'm going to say something that you may not have heard before. Do not read the story. You do not read the story. Please don't read the story to a low-level language child who can't answer questions, not good vocabulary, they just cannot process all these words. And you're going to lose their attention. You really will. Just paraphrase it. This is the story about Max. Max is making a cake with I'm going to say here, making a cake with mud and earthworms, mud and worms. Now listen to the complexity of this. Max made her an earthworm birthday cake. No meaning to this child. No meaning. It's too much information embedded in one sentence. But if you change it, Max is making his grandma a cake with mud and worms. Now the child, oh, I don't want that. And you're animated, you're engaged. No, says his sister Ruby. We're not giving her that cake. We're going to make her an angel cake with raspberry fluff icing. Or you can even reduce it with raspberry icing. Max wants to help, but Ruby says, don't touch anything. But, oh no, now I'm sorry I forgot my egg. You would definitely want the egg right here. And you could see if the child comes up with something. Or you could say, oh, the egg. Or if you know your children really well, you could say what happened if you felt they could answer it. Oh yeah, the egg broke. Now he has to go to the store to buy more and see if they filled eggs. And remember Brenda said the written word is the most high-level symbol? But you have the written word attached to the object, attached to it broke, he has to go to the store. You have an engaged child. He's listening. He or she is listening. When you do this book, do not go into the red heart marshmallow squirters. How many of you have lost your child by then? They don't know what that is. I can see you nodding. Just nod from the ground. That makes no sense. I mean, I know what they are because I have grandchildren. Don't even go there with the lower level child. Just continue with the story. He's going to go to the store to buy some eggs. And the grocer gives him the eggs. But when he goes home, the sister says, don't bump the table. And you're sitting at don't bump that table. You're going to bump the table. Uh-oh. And you have your milk. And you can open it up and spill a little in a cup, or you can pretend to spill it and have them pretend. It's going to have so much meaning for that child. So what does he have to do? Go to the store and get and they'll say, and you can say, milk. So now you can see how engaged they are, and you continue with the story, paraphrasing it. Don't read every word. You're going to lose them. This is a long book for a child. Okay. They go through the whole book. You have your flour. He spills the flour. Now you get to the part where he goes home and gets the flour. But when he goes home, there's a sign that says, do not come in the kitchen. He can't go in because he might spill something. You're not going to ask, why can't he go in? Because where is why on the scaffolding of questions? Way up high, way up high. So even with your typical 4-year-old, they could have trouble answering why questions. Okay, but if you have a real advanced child, they will be able to answer that question. So Ruby finishes the cake and she makes the icing, and you could even skip a couple pages because now you've had the attention of the child probably over 5, 6, 7 minutes. And then you can go to the page where, this is in your handouts, you can go to the page where Max is outside making his mud cake with earthworms. And they give it to Grandma. Oh, and she has 2 cakes. 1, 2. And you could ask the child, do you think she will eat this cake or this cake? So you're giving a choice. You're not saying which one will she eat. You're not doing too much of an open-ended. You're giving them a choice. Like Brenda said, you're narrowing the field, but you're still asking the question, will she eat this cake or this cake? Or maybe 2 cakes. And then every answer is right. Thank you for that. Now you have a child who is not a little bit, but more advanced, and you want to do bunny cakes. So now you still want to bring your objects because they love it. As adults, we like to be engaged in hands-on things. So, but you can say, okay, these are things that are in our story. What do you think the story's about? So now that's that open-ended question. Oh, he's going to say, it's about a bunny in a bowl. It looks like that bunny's in a bowl. That's kind of funny. What do you think he could be thinking about? He could be making, you can lead the child to the answer. He's going to make something. Let's talk about the things he's going to have. He's going to use them. And then you just talk about it, name it, and he'll know, if he doesn't know, if he or she doesn't know a spatula, you can pretend to cook with this, just like you do with the lower, just because it's fun, and it's pretend. And we'll talk about pretend in a little bit. Everything you bring for the lower child level, to support the child with low language skills, you can bring for the higher child too, because it's fun. You want to have fun. When you do your front cover, your back cover, your spine, you author the illustrator. Now this time you are going to read, and you can do the pictures, but this time you don't have to match. You could just take turns naming. Some of these things are higher level. For example, the cooling rack. That's a higher level. You may not have exposure to that. What do you do with that? The recipe holder, the book. There are things in there that are not as familiar to children. And so I do love all of the pictures on the page. You can take turn naming them. The sugar bowl. You have a sugar bowl at home. Okay. Now, you are going to read every word here. It was Grandma's birthday. Max made her an earthworm birthday cake. And you could have some animation. Ugh, do you think she'd like that? Ask her opinion. No. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. No, Max, said Max's sister Ruby. We're going to make Grandma an angel surprise cake with raspberry fluff icing. Max wanted to help. Don't touch anything, Max, said Ruby. Why do you think she doesn't want him to touch anything? That question is much more complex than you think, because he or she has to take the perspective of Ruby. Why do you think she does not want him to touch anything? He has to, as Brenda said, have visual imagery to pull on a past experience where he or she was not allowed to touch anything. And he or she will probably say, don't break the eggs, or I don't know. Well, if they don't know, well, let's see what happens. Or they will probably come up with something. Yes, but it was too late. Ruby had to send Max to the store with a list that said, now you're going to talk about this. And if you have a child, even a typical 4-year-old, if you say, what happened? You want to make sure they have the vocabulary. They dropped the egg. They cracked it. The egg fell. If they say something like they dumped the egg, how many of you have kids that use dump for everything? Use the word dump. I have kids, when I want to do verbs, they use dump for fall and break and pour. But you want to make sure they're using accurate vocabulary. So, oh, he broke the eggs. He dropped them and they broke. Okay, we're going to talk about that technique in a minute, but I'm going to talk about it now. If they say he dropped the eggs, you can expand on it. You can say, yes, he dropped the eggs and they broke. What a mess. Okay, and the eggs go to the store and they'll know that says eggs. But Max wanted the red hot marshmallow squirters for his earthworm cake. So he wrote, red hot marshmallow squirters. Does that look like writing? And you could talk about the word scribble, or he thought it was writing, but it really, those aren't letters, are they? That's why when he goes to the store, the grocer could not read Max's writing. Eggs, said the grocer, and he gave Max the eggs. If you do with a higher level child, take time to talk about what the word is. This is scribble, it's really not letters. It will make more sense to the child why the grocer did not give him the red hot marshmallow squirters. We think they get that, but I don't think they do unless you point that out to them. Okay, so he goes home, he spills the milk, you read the story, you have the milk. This time he wrote it a different way. Remember that concept, same and different? Oh, what was different about it? And you may have to go back to the way he wrote it the first time. To this, what's this? Look at this, and now look at how he did it. And he does, it's really, really good to point out these little things so then you can help them. They may not know why he wrote it differently. See, it was red and now it's red and green. Okay. And then you continue with the story as it's supposed to be read. Now, when you get to this part, and this is all in your handout, where she has the sign. When Max got home, there was a sign on the door. Max, the kitchen is no place for you, said Ruby. So he could not go in the kitchen, and there's the sign. Okay, Ruby finished up her cake. Okay, when you get to this page, you might want to point out, look what Max is looking at. He's looking at the sign. He's thinking of something. Okay. Because it says Max, meanwhile, Max had a brand new idea. He's thinking. Okay, so you get to the end of the book, and this time, the grocer gives him the red hot marshmallow squirters. Oh boy, how did he know? What did he do? And then, he drew the picture. How did he get that idea? Go back a little bit. Then, how did Max come up with that idea? And if he doesn't get it, you said, he saw the sign. He had an idea. It gave him an idea. And he drew the picture. Now, I wonder when I see this done, is that these look like paw prints to me, don't they? I wonder if the children, even high level, really understand that these are pictures of the squirters. Until you point out, there it is on the box. Okay, it's worth it to make sure they understand that. Okay, so now they finish up the book. Now you're at the end of the book, and you can say, I'm going to ask someone for a volunteer. What do you think an open-ended question would be at the end of the book? I know you know. Which cake would you eat? Yeah, which one would you like? What do you think Grandma's going to do? What do you think Grandma's going to do? Which one would you like? Right. And every answer is going to be correct. Versus, do you think Grandma ate this cake or this cake? Which is better for the lower language child. Remember I said when he broke the egg or the egg dropped, you want to expand it? Expansion is for all children at all levels. You come into their house and they say, oh, I got a Batman toy. You say, oh, you have a Batman toy? It flies and it has a cape. I love Batman. I see Batman on TV. You're not going to, but our instinct is to say, you have a Batman. Where did you get it? Or who got it for you, right? That's our instinct. But you really just want to take what a child says and add information to it. And so this is just an example. You have this in your handout. And when you add information, you're giving them the vocabulary and expanding their sentences just through modeling. Okay. I want to talk about play a little bit. when you bring objects in and you are acting them out, you are playing. As adults, we play. How many of you have video games on your phones or video games on TV? And we play. We want to play. Go board games. Play is, if you do research on play, play is the healthiest thing you can do for your brain. Because play is fun and it relaxes the brain, the whole body relaxes, your whole breathing system slows down, and you can process information. If you have a child that feels they're being put on the spot, okay, tell me the first letter in your name. You know, even a higher level child, unless they really know the answer, you know, you're sort of like, I gotta get this right. I gotta get this right. I gotta get this right. And so your tendency is to tense up and your brain doesn't process as well. So whatever you do with your families, and I understand because I'm there too, and Brenda is too, try to have as fun. Try to have fun with every family, with every child, no matter how challenging. You can take the child's lead, and maybe that lesson's not going to work for the day, and they come in with their Batman, and they're not going to pay attention to your book. So play with Batman a little bit. Have Batman listen to the book with you. You know, involve what the child is interested in the moment to make that lesson work. It's all with play. Let me talk a little bit more about that. So in child development, play is rehearsal of real life. 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds, they really begin to play cooperatively, first parallel play and then cooperative play. Cooperative play is role taking. You be the mommy, I'll be the daddy. This is my baby's crying. Oh, daddy's gonna go to work. Remember those playing house days? Children, they love to play. If boys will play with their cars and their trucks, and these are things and the fireman is coming. They're practicing what they have seen and heard in the real world, and it is a step of symbolism from the real world into pretend, into that symbolic hierarchy. Okay? So the more pretending you do, even another step from my real objects would be to bring in toy objects, like a little toy cooking set is a step more abstract than the real objects. So anything you can do to build symbolic symbolism is really, really advantageous for the child because it goes right into reading. The more a child pretend plays, has complex language, can take another child's perspective, can negotiate rules, their reading comprehension will be much better. They can do all of those things. And all those important facets into your parents' lives, into the children's lives. So pretend play is very, very important. I'm going to shift gears here a minute and talk about what we usually call grammar. And in professional terms, we call it syntax, but it really is grammar. Grammar is how a child puts together their words using nouns, verbs, the objects of verbs, past tenses, pronouns. Now you heard Luke in the beginning. His grammar, his syntax was great. He even said I wore, not I weird, because irregular verbs come before the ed, after the ed ending verbs, and they generalize it. I fell, I called. Okay, that's all normal for 4. Then they learn the irregular. So you want to have a child with good syntax by 4.5. Absolutely, 4.5-year-olds really should be talking in really complete sentences. If you have a child, and I'm sure you all do, that say, him hit me, okay, her coming. Where are you going? What you have in bag, or what you have in your bag, okay? You really want to keep an eye on that, and you model back the correct way. Okay, so if you have a child that said, you coming tomorrow? You coming back? And you would say, are you coming back? Yes, I'll be back next week. No, they didn't know what next week is, but you just want to model it correctly first and give them the answer. Don't ask them to repeat it, but that is also a good thing for the parents to hear. You want your parents to be modeling back to them the correct way to say it. So you're not going to tell the parent that, but you're modeling it back and they're listening to that. So grammar, again, plays into reading comprehension, because if you have immature grammar, you can't really express thoughts in a very cohesive manner. Let me give you an example. I had a little guy, real bright little guy, and he's doing well, but his syntax, his grammar is still pretty delayed. And he went outside, and someone didn't see him go onto the porch, and they locked the screen door, and he couldn't get in. And so I'm talking to Mom, we didn't see this happen, and so finally someone opened the door for him, and he was a little bit upset, and he was trying to say, I couldn't get in because someone locked the door, or the door was locked and I couldn't get in, and all he could get out was, him locked door. And when you have poor grammar, you can't get those connecting words. Him locked door because it's too complex. So immature grammar limits the complexity of sentences. So if you have a child like that, after time, you might want to bring it to your team and just consult with your speech pathologist to see if it's necessary for a consult or to look at that. By 4.5, 4-year-olds are intelligible and they have correct syntax. They're intelligible to 90% of their listeners. Even if there's no context, they can be understood. That's a good rule of thumb. Any question about syntax or grammar? We talked about pragmatics a little bit with Luke. It's social language. Luke had inflection and he was animated and he's thinking. When he was thinking, he had some pauses in there. Maybe he's trying to pull those words out, but that was pretty complex. Oh, those two Lukes are the same? No, they're not the same. And he's thinking how to answer that. But pragmatics is when they're socially connected with you. You ask a question, they give a right answer, or they're making a comment about what you said. Pragmatics is recognizable when it's not there. When it's not there, you know something's not right, because you're talking to the child and they're looking at the ceiling, or they're spinning around, or they're not engaged with you at all with the materials, they're doing something else with them, and there's just not a good connection. And children who are on the spectrum, you recognize will not have good pragmatics. There's a huge question out there really throughout the country now that we have children learning more than one language. When is it a bilingual issue? They're trying to learn 2 languages and they're not responding in English, they can't answer questions. Is it because they're learning 2 languages? Or is there really a speech problem? Is there really a time to bring in an evaluator to see what's really happening? So there's a lot of research going on right now in this area, and they've come up with some guidelines, and I'm going to share that with you. So you have all these different levels of learning 2 languages. This is the place that a 4-year-old or 4.5-year-old gets to when they have possession of 2 languages in their brain, and they can switch from one to the other. Okay, so this says there are parallel linguistically systems, and parents have a different mother, they have different languages, and at this time they can go back and forth. I'll explain a little more technically here. The last one is interesting. This is when a person can speak 2 languages so well that you can't tell which country they're from. They have the inflection, they have the dialect, they have the vowels, they have the accents just right in both languages. But a 4-year-old will get like this, where they can switch back and forth very easily. How does that happen? Oh my God, to me it's a miracle. It's all innate. Your brain is programmed to learn languages at a young age. It becomes harder and harder to learn a second language as you get older and older. High school is a terrible time to start to learn a language. It's really a struggle. But if you're 2, 3, 4, it just happens automatically. You're 4-year-old, you're speaking 2 languages. Human beings are the only species that have that ability to communicate verbally and orally in language. So it is very fascinating. Okay, so researchers have shown that children learn 2 languages or 3 languages even, 2 different ways. The main way is simultaneously. So you have a child that hears, I'm going to use Spanish because we have a lot of Spanish-speaking children in Stark County. They hear Spanish from their mother and English from their father, okay? And by the time they're 3.5 or 4, they're using both languages. What the researchers are saying is you have to set parameters where they hear one language from one set of adults, the second language from another set or some other people. So for example, I have a family now. The mother and father speak English to the little boy, but the grandparents only speak Spanish, okay? And now he's in preschool, so he's going to hear, English out in preschool, and hopefully he's 3, he just turned 3, and by the time he's 4, he will definitely be bilingual. You want to encourage these families to continue this. Don't let them think that their child might be delayed because they're speaking 2 languages. What an advantage in life to have to be bilingual. Be positive about it. But you do want to tell them that you can say this. Research has shown that it's best if they hear one language from one parent or a set of parents and the other language from grandparents or in another environment, and keep that consistent. Research is also showing that the adults should speak the language they're most comfortable in. You don't want a parent or grandparent speaking broken English to the child. That could be a deterrent to fluency. The second way that they learn 2 languages is sequentially. So you may have a family that just speaks Spanish in the house, and they're going to learn Spanish. We have a pair of partners, I think they just reported that the child doesn't know any English because they all speak Spanish. That's okay. That's okay because they'll learn English as they're exposed to your parent partner. They'll eventually, you want them to get into preschool, they'll learn it in church, they'll learn it on the playground. They will pick up that second language. And they'll do it well because they have a strong basis in their native home language. So they'll learn. All languages have same components. All languages have nouns. All languages have verbs. They have all different tenses, and they have all different structures, but the child builds the second language on the knowledge of the first. For example, they'll learn, colors in English come after the noun, whereas in most languages, it comes before the noun, but in most languages it comes after the noun. And they'll pick that up just intuitively. So if you have a child that is weak in English because they have a different language at home, it could be difficult at first, but it's okay. It's okay. You want to get that child out into English-speaking environments as much as possible, and preschool would be your first place you want that child to be able to go. And they will learn that second language. Now, to really identify a child who's being bilingual doesn't mean a child who's delayed because they're having 2 languages doesn't necessarily mean that they have a language problem or a speech problem. But children who will have 2 languages doesn't mean that they can't have a speech. It could be an underlying problem. But what you'll find is that they're having the problem in both languages. If they're not saying words that they should be saying at 3 in one language, they won't be saying it in the other. Or if they don't understand questions in English, they're not going to understand the questions in Spanish either. So you can ask the parents that. If you're not sure, say, well, if you tell him to get the ball in English and he doesn't get it, and you tell him in Spanish, will he get it? You kind of get some data that way, and you can bring it to your team.
Hi, I'm Amy, and I'm 4 years old, and I live in Germany. And my dad comes from Germany, and my mom comes from New Zealand. Ich bin die Emile und ich bin 4 Jahre alt und meine Mama kommt aus Neuseeland und mein Papa kommt aus Deutschland. Ich habe einen kleinen Bruder, der heißt Matteo. Das ist mein kleiner Bruder Matteo. Would you like an ice cream? I would like an ice cream and a lollipop. Schokolade, Schokolade, Marmelade, Käse, Butter, Zucchini, Paprika und Erbsen. The wind is howling like it's really so inside. Nicht zu kontrollieren, ich habe es versucht. Lass sie nicht rein, lass sie nicht sehen. Wie du bist, nein, das darf niemals geschehen. Let's see you don't feel, don't let them know how they know. Ich lasse los, die Kraft sie ist glänzelos. Ich bin frei und ich schlag die Türen so. Das ist Zeit, nun bin ich bereit. And the storm may draw me cold and my bother me away.